XCOM is a fantastic turn-based strategy series, and the standalone spin-off Chimera Squad makes some big changes to tactics. To help you avoid the kind of mistakes that will end your first playthrough early, we're going to get you caught up on XCOM Chimera Squad's new mechanics. Number 1. Breach! Breaching is one of Chimera Squad's most enjoyable additions to XCOM. In previous games, you always had the option to rip open a wall and make your own fun, but now it's mandatory. Each mission has a number of set encounters, typically 1 to 3, and each encounter starts with a breach. This seems to be an interesting solution to cutting down on running in Overwatch between fights. The absolute most important thing to understand about breaching is that the order you stack up on the door determines both the order the agents enter the room and also where they take cover afterwards. You can change the breach order with these small arrows up top. They're kind of easy to miss. You cannot, however, control precisely where agents take cover, so plan carefully. That being said, don't be afraid to restart if things aren't looking too good. The order of your agent's breach is also critical because they have breach-specific abilities. For example, who you levitate, who you blind, and who you spray acid on can make a big difference. Agents can also have breaching gear like flashbangs and smoke. In order to use it, you'll need to stack them up on the door in a way that makes sense. For example, the door kicker can't also throw a grenade. Breaching gear can be found in this little area. Also easy to miss. Some great tips for breaching are: don't undercommit to a breach point since you don't know what's behind the door. You don't want an agent in a room alone. There are usually multiple breach points with different bonuses and penalties to consider. Which agent you assign matters. So for example, make sure to send a tanky character through a door that roots them in place for a turn. Know what the labels mean over enemies. These are aggressive, alert, and surprised. Aggressive enemies will fire back in the breaching phase and need to be dealt with first. Then you can probably focus on enemies you know will be a problem down the line. If the room doesn't have aggressive enemies, you can avoid wasting defensive breaching actions that pull aggro at the expense of shooting. Pay attention to how many encounters you're about to do on a mission, and conserve your resources for later rooms if possible. Some abilities can only be used once a mission. If there's only one encounter, then you're good, light them up. Finally, like previous games, you can still make your own holes after breach phase by tearing through walls with explosives, and it's still a hell of a lot of fun. Number 2, turn order. There's a new order listed on the right side of the screen that mixes up good guy and bad guy turns. So consider making your decisions not based on who's the closest or who has the most dangerous weapon, but on who's going next. In other words, the person with the gun next to you can be less dangerous than the person at the back of the room who's about to fire. You can also reference the turn order, which is listed over each enemy's head. Each agent technically gets 2 actions, but certain equipment and gear doesn't count against it. Just make sure to do everything you want before firing, because that action almost always ends the turn until you buy certain mods later. Early in the game, it's good to just be aggressive and go after the next enemy in line, but later on you should learn to manipulate the turn order in your favor. For example, there's a team up mechanic that lets you bring up one agent in the order once per mission. There are also team abilities that allow you to swap places with fellow agents or delay an opponent's action. Some agents can also constrict enemies and negate their turn. Some can give away turns or lock down enemies with psionic abilities. If you're in a good spot, you can also use preparation, a type of hunker down mechanic that increases your defensive rating, gets rid of burning, and also gives you another turn in fairly short order before the end of the round. When you get the hang of turn order, you can do some really fun things, like teleport an enemy to your team and give them a serious beatdown. Speaking of beatdowns, Number 3, make arrests. In Chimera Squad, you are a paramilitary police force, which means killing isn't the only or best option. You can and should make plenty of arrests because they net you valuable intel that you can then use to cut down on UNREST. UNREST is an ever-present thing you need to manage, and failing to do so can lose the game. More on that in a bit. You can also trade in intel on the black market for certain items like weapon mods. The arrest action also appears to let you travel the full distance of a dash and then attack. Basically free run and gun.
Another caller for the medic.
A great technique to make arrests is to attempt to wound as many enemies as possible during the breach phase, and then mop up the room with fisticuffs. There are specialized tools you can buy later on, such as tranquilizer rounds, to make arrests with less risk. Arrests can also be a very satisfying way to end an encounter. Just don't try to knock out enemies in a bad situation, or it might get you killed. Number 4, death. If you're an XCOM veteran, you already know that XCOM can be punishing at almost every difficulty. In Chimera, losing an agent fails the game automatically and you'll have to restart the encounter. Agents die when they lose all of their health and are not stabilized by a teammate within a few turns. There are things you can do to lower your chances of losing though, such as building android replacements. Androids are squad replacements that show up between breaches when an agent is incapacitated. They can be a bit pricey, but they come in clutch. If androids are damaged, they can be repaired back at base, but if they're destroyed, they are dead. There is still technically permadeath if you consider androids to be alive. The other big thing you'll have to adapt your mindset to is how gravely wounded agents work differently. Unlike previous XCOM games, they aren't out of action for long periods of time. Instead, they develop negative traits in the form of scars. Scars can cause problems like greatly restrict movement, reduce your ability to land shots, or cause agents to panic. Some of these scars can be a real problem, and it's in your interest to either dedicate some time for those agents at a training center to remove the scars, or put them on desk duty for a while in the form of research projects or spec ops missions, which will net you extra resources. Number 5. UNREST. City 31 has an unrest mechanic similar to many previous XCOM games. If you lose enough districts to unrest, you'll lose the city. And like other XCOMs, this can happen long before you even know it, so save periodically. Each district can have a field team attached to it, which you purchase with intel. Remember that bit about making arrests earlier? Field teams have the ability to reduce or even freeze the buildup of unrest, and can be upgraded to do even more. Do not neglect your field teams. Number 6. Tweak early research priorities. Like previous XCOMs, if you go into a mission under-equipped, you can get yourself into an unwinnable situation. Unlike earlier XCOM games, you can slightly tweak your priorities because death and wounds work differently. Agents with scars aren't fun, but they can be managed. So here's a few recommendations. You can probably put off armor research a bit longer than you're comfortable with to invest in android replacements. Early armor research honestly doesn't give you that much more protection versus having a full squad member ready to go as backup. Since androids do have permadeath and are expensive to replace, take some time to boost their survivability. Invest in breaching items because they're really just a hell of a lot of fun. Entering a room protected by smoke or with stunned enemies can be the key to seizing early advantages. Research and buy throwables that can mess with the enemy team until you develop agents to manipulate the turn order. Turn order is king. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about these changes to the XCOM formula, and we want to hear your best advice for how to play. Let us know about your favorite tactics in the comments below, and check out our other coverage of XCOM Chimera Squad. Thanks for watching.